For our fifth session, we will have Mr. Syed Yusuf Raza Gilani, who is a renowned Pakistani politician and has served as the 18th Prime Minister of Pakistan. Today, he will be discussing human rights and democracy with us. Can you please have him?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Lord Qurban, members of Honorable Society of Lincoln's Inn, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to you all. It's a unique honor and a privilege for me to be here today and speak in this occasion. I stand before you as a humble representative of the people of Pakistan, as a senator and a former Prime Minister of Pakistan. I am grateful for the kind invitation extended to me by Society of Lincoln's Inn. Lincoln's Inn remains one of the oldest and most prestigious institutions of higher learning and legal education. It prepared its members not only to become fine lawyers, but also conscientious, thoughtful, and responsible professionals. As a Muslim, it is a unique honor for me that the biggest lawgiver in history was the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. As a Pakistani, I have a special connection with Lincoln's Inn, as it were the founding father of Pakistan. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah was called to the bar. Lincoln's Inn was also the place where Allama Iqbal, the great poet who provided the literary inspiration and spiritual guidance for the movement to create Pakistan, was called to the bar. I have been asked to speak on democracy and human rights. Rule of law, equality, human rights are the glue that binds society. They are the bridge between the state and the people. Without human rights, no progress is possible. No civilized society is possible. No democracy is possible. I've been a political activist all my life. And before I was elected Prime Minister in 2008, I had spent more than 6 years in a prison under a dictatorship regime for my political convictions. I was vindicated by the courts and more importantly by the people and history. The trials, which hunts and tribulations, once again emphasized the importance of fundamental rights to me and strengthened my resolve to strive for justice system which is fair, just and equitable. I was punished by a dictator of being Pakistan People's Party member. Shahid Zulfikar Ali Bhutto created a party based on the values of democracy, equality, freedom, and human rights. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Shahid Mahatma Benazir Bhutto also created a cadre of political workers who were trained in democratic politics and who understood the rights and responsibilities of upholding fundamental rights. Particularly in the party was a party that gave Pakistan the Constitution of 1973. Mr. Bhutto and Benazir Bhutto, President Zardari, and thousands of Pakistan People's Party's workers paid a heavy price for the commitment to people, to democracy, and fundamental rights. They were executed, assassinated, flogged, and imprisoned. The journey of sacrifice and examples of Shaheed Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Shaheed Mohtamma Benazir Bhutto has made PPP worker what is it today. Courageous human rights defender, critical thinker, and fiercely loyal. Ladies and gentlemen, I became the first unanimously elected Prime Minister of Pakistan when the country was beginning to transition to democracy. It was time of great fear and apprehension. With a systemic dismantling of democratic institutions by the previous regime, a global economic recession, and a divided country. By the grace of Almighty, the leadership of my party, and the strength of my convictions, we steadied the ship. My first order as the Prime Minister was to release the judges of the superior courts held in custody of General Musharraf. I felt an obligation to stand up for rule of law and independence of judiciary. I was the first Prime Minister to create a human rights ministry and provide it with all necessary support. I was the Prime Minister to create Ministry of Interfaith Harmony and to recognize the historic speech of Quaid-e-Azam on 11th August 1947 that gave the vision of tolerant and egalitarian Pakistan. I declared August 11 as Minorities Day to remind ourselves to the promise made by the Quaid. Despite being a victim myself, I have opposed witch hunts and political victimization of opponents throughout my career. As the Chief Executive, I ensured that the National Accountability Bureau, NAB, worked independently and not in an instrument of the government. Previously, NAB used to report to the Cabinet Office and was micromanaged by the Office of the Prime Minister. I directed the oversight of NAB be done by the Ministry of Law, Justice, Human Rights, and Parliamentary Affairs. I wear it as a badge of honor during my term as the longest serving Prime Minister of Pakistan. There was no political prisoners and no persecution of political opponents. The relentless attacks on the Constitution of Pakistan by dictators and their proxies and collaborators had taken a toll. And when I became Prime Minister, I had a privilege and responsibility of overseeing the long overdue step of returning the Constitution to its original form, freeing it from encroachment and non-democratic rule. 18th Amendment was the most extensive exercise in constitutional legislation since the framing of the Constitution. It was the spirit of tolerance, understanding, and pluralism that allowed the 18th Amendment to be passed unanimously. At that time, when the Constitution was made in 1973, there was a unicameral system. There was one house. When we amended the Constitution, it was bicameral system. The Senate and the National Assembly, it was passed by 128 votes, but when the Constitution was amended to its original form, it was passed by 446 members and none opposed. It was the spirit of tolerance, freedom of expression, and association formed the cornerstone of, and I held firmly to upholding the protecting these rights. I got rid of draconian laws and rules curbing the freedom of media and provided an enabling environment for dissenting and critical voices. Today we face many international and regional challenges. My term as Prime Minister demonstrated that a commitment to unity, Democracy and freedom makes us better suited to persuasively and confidently speak to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, while we all often organize, arrange events and parliamentary debates on human rights and democracy, the plight of the Kashmiri people and the situation in Palestine are stark reminders of collective failures. Kashmir and Palestine are only prime examples where UN resolutions stand ignored. The widespread human rights crisis in different parts of the world seem to fall on the deaf ears as well, unless there are economic or geopolitical agendas involved. Western democracy, though proud of their own democratic structures, somehow fail to stand up for the same principles when it comes to international issues. India's illegal and unilateral action on 5th August 2019 pushed Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir further into darkness, shutting down all modes of communications and deployment of hundreds of thousands of troops has turned the Kashmir Valley into an open-air prison. The people of IIOJK continue to face relentless violations of their basic freedoms with arbitrary detentions, extrajudicial killings, and restrictions that perpetuate a cycle of violence. The situation calls for our unwavering support and commitment towards a just and lasting solution based on international law and respect for human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the darkness in Kashmir risks engulfing the entire constitutional and democratic edifice of India. While the attack on Kashmir is the most egregious assault on the idea of pluralist, secular, and democratic India, the signs of majoritarian fascism have been inescapable for the past many years. For mob lynching of Muslims for eating beef to the continued persecution of Dalits. If the world and conscientious India do not step up, 7 decades of democracy will be undone. As a Pakistani, South Asians, we wish to see in India a democratic and pluralistic dispensation rather than autocratic ones. Pakistan knows the values of democracy and peace with and the cost of it. Pakistan has lost over 50,000 citizens in this battle with violent extremism. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most acute challenges to democracy and human rights around the world at the moment is authoritarian populism. I am referring to the rise of leaders who lie to people, who incite violence, who seek to create division and polarization, who have no ideology and no agenda beyond that of self-interest for themselves and for destruction for everyone else. They want stability and democratic norms in politics to be replaced by hysteria and abuse. The assault on principles of constitutional supremacy, democracy, accountability, and of tolerance, whether it is in Islamabad, New Delhi, Washington, D.C., or anywhere else, is bullying, not politics. It must be confronted. Ladies and gentlemen, it is in this interconnected world, we must not turn a blind eye to the plight of millions of migrants forced to leave their homes due to conflicts, persecution, and economic hardships. While understanding and appreciating the constraints and limitations of host countries and cracking down on human smugglers and enablers of human tragedy, the world must also assume collective responsibility to recognize the inherent dignity of migrants and safeguard their fundamental rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the struggle for human rights is ongoing, and a commitment to upholding these universal principles must remain steadfast. All of us around the world have a responsibility to fight for universal values of democracy, human rights, tolerance, and equality. No one knows the value of rule of law and equal protection of law better than the members of Lincoln's Inn. I look forward to us working together and struggling together for a better, more tolerant, and inclusive and equitable world. And I wish you success in your deliberations. I am grateful for your patience, attention. Thank you very much.